Welcome back to the Para Mi YouTube series, You Can Do Anything. These series are meant to inspire you and maybe connect you with new faces that you haven't seen before. Today, we are sharing why it's important to share our own story. Why should we own our story? And why should we read stories like ours? So we have Ofelia here with us. Thanks for being here. So excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me in your beautiful new space.
Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to get started with Ofelia. What is it that you do? And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Ofelia Martinez, and I am an author of contemporary romance. And it's actually a pen name. About 3 years ago, after a decade of writing, I approached my grandmother and asked her if I could use her name to write dirty books. And my abuelita said, sí, mija, just translate them so I can read them too. So I'm slowly translating them for her. I'm originally from the El Paso Juarez border, and so I'm a border child. And my mom was a bit of a gypsy, so we moved around a lot growing up. But Kansas City is home now. And after 3 years of publishing, I have 6 novels published and 3 novellas. It's been a busy decade and a half for me writing all those and publishing them out in 3 years. So I will clarify I'm an independent author. I have a lot of reasons for wanting to do that, but primarily I wanted to make sure that I wasn't censored in the Latina stories I wanted to tell. All my books feature either one or both Mexican or Mexican American love interests, or the main characters. And there were storylines that I wasn't willing to compromise on, so I went the indie route. But yeah, that's me.
Yes, to being the main characters and not the supporting roles. So thank you for doing that. Let's drink a little cafecito here.
Mm-hmm. Tecito.
So, Ophelia, I'm really curious. I love that you use your grandmother's name as a pen name. What a beautiful way to honor her. But what made you get into storytelling? Like, where did this desire to write stories of our own come from?
Well, I always knew I was going to be an artist of some sort. And growing up, I thought I was going to be a visual artist and started off with a love of cartoons and drawing. And then I grew up and wanted to be a painter, very serious painter. And I realized in college that, and this is not self deprecating, it was just self awareness and really going inward and realizing that though this was my dream, I didn't have quite the talent for being a painter. I can appreciate art. I still love making it as a hobby, but I didn't feel like I had the talent necessary to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And painting, it's the shorter form for me of storytelling. And I've always loved reading. And I thought, well, let's give writing a try. In a way, I'm still painting, but I'm painting stories that are more complex, more nuanced. I have a lot more space than I did on a canvas to tell a story in a novel form. So long form definitely suited me better. So it started just from a love of art and wanting to create stories.
Incredible. And now you're a few books in. So, when we think about stories, and now that you're writing stories of people like us, why do you think it's important to, one, have them written, but also why read stories of people who look like us or have had similar life experiences to us? Why does that matter?
That's such a good question. That makes me think of a book I read in my early 20s called Gabby, A Girl in Pieces by Isabel Quintero. I'm pretty sure that's the author's name. And it's a YA book, but I read it in my 20s. And I remember reading that book thinking, if I had had this book in my hands as a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl, my life would be so different. This was a young Mexican American girl who had a family like mine. She sounded like me. She looked like me. She had the problems and angst as a teenager that I did that's unique to a Mexican American young girl. And she was in that book, yes, struggling, but also breaking down doors that I didn't know existed. When I was 13, I didn't know there was a door, let alone that I could kick it open. Right. But observing that in a story, I'm like, wait, this is an option. I could find these doors and break them down like she's doing. And if I had had that book in my hands, I think I would have made a lot of very different life choices. And part of it is we want the stories of our successes because we have so many stories of our struggles. And right. There are a lot of great authors doing work in that space, and it's important and we need them. But to only have our struggles represented in print kind of gives this message to our youth that
this is our future, this is our life, and these are the doors you have. And that's not true. There are successful Latinos in the world. So we have to show the success so you can see, no, there are these doors and you can find them and you can kick them down. So I think the success stories to me are just as important as the stories for struggle.
Yeah, love that answer. And with that kind of same lens, just as it is important to read stories of our own and read of our successes, um, do you believe it's important to also share and own our own stories? And if so, why does that matter? To bring our stories with us.
Definitely. I don't think it's important. I think it's imperative that we share our stories and that we own our stories. I think a lot about a review I got very early on. I think it was my debut novel. And for context, the two main characters are doctors. They work at the same hospital. They're both Latinos. Their inner circle, their friends, their family, their neighborhood, they're Latino because this is the world I live in. This is my world as it exists. So it is influenced by my life. And I remember this reviewer saying, I don't believe there are so many Latino doctors at the same hospital in the Midwest.
What?
And I had to unpack that, okay? So I thought, okay, let's give this reader the benefit of the doubt. They're not from the Midwest, so they don't know the rich history of how our ancestors built the railroads.
Right.
They don't know that to this day we have minority majority towns that are predominantly Mexican American, that are third, fourth generation. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know that about this area of the country. But I thought to myself, what if I had instead written a book set instead of in a hospital in like downtown Kansas City, like I did? What if I had set it in rural Kansas in a farm and
Mm.
my main cast were strawberry pickers and that's where they met and fell in love? Could you believe the majority of the cast is Latino then? It's because we're in this box and it's uncomfortable to some people, or not uncomfortable, but they can't believe it because they haven't really seen it in media yet.
Mhm.
They haven't seen in media that a Grey's Anatomy type cast could be predominantly Latino,
Latino.
right? And it
Wow.
could. We have inner city hospitals and predominantly Mexican American communities. They're going to staff a lot of Latino nurses and doctors because that's what the community needs.
Yeah, just go to El Paso.
Right? So I feel like just putting ourselves out of the box and this limited view of what we can be and showing not just to ourselves and our own children but also just to larger community, this is, we can be this too.
Yeah.
Like we can be strawberry pickers and farm workers and there's a lot of honor in that, but we can also be physicians and doctors and have other physician doctor friends who are also Latino. Like
Yeah.
both things can exist.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned like it's important to see ourselves in new spaces because when we started Para Mi, we weren't sure what we were going to do. We just knew we wanted to have this conversation with other women, particularly Latinas, of like, we can go for more, we can do more. And after we launched, what we got were stories. People were sending us private messages of like, I see you guys. I see that you're nervous on your lives, but you're encouraging me to want to do it. Or I can't believe you started a business. I've always wanted to do that. And so for me, that's when, and for the team here at Para Mi, that's when we kind of realized how important representation really was, right? And it's not about checking off a box, but it's about showing what's possible and those examples that perhaps sometimes in the US are not readily available to us if we're not in the Los Angeles areas or the highly Latino populated areas. And in the Midwest, it can feel like we're a little bit isolated from those stories, right? So, for anyone watching who might be on the fence about telling or sharing their own story, maybe even writing their own story, what advice do you have here for someone who might be, hey, I want to share my story, I want to tell my story?
This is very disheartening advice, but wait for it, there's a point to it. Every single story that could ever exist or has ever been told has already been told.
Mm.
So if you're an aspiring author, aspiring writer, and you think, I have an idea that is so unique, it's going to be groundbreaking, it's going to be great. You don't. It's not a unique story.
Sorry, you don't.
You don't. The magic happens with your voice. That's the important piece. What you have as an individual writer that nobody else in this world has, even if the story has been told 100 times or a million times,
nobody can tell the story in your voice and with your worldview. And that's where the magic happens. I write romance. Every single romance story that could ever be written has been written. But how many stories have you read in popular romantic books of predominantly Latino characters? How many female main characters have you seen that are undocumented childhood arrivals and them having to navigate love and their life choices being in that type of status? I had not read a book like that. So this is my worldview, and that's what I bring to a story that's been told a million times. And that's where the magic of writing happens. It's with your voice, your worldview, and your viewpoint.
Wow, amazing. And so, with that question you just answered, with someone wanting, perhaps we have aspiring writers watching this, Latina writers watching this, how do you get started? How do you kind of, yeah, do you just start writing? Do you get a mentor? Do you take a seminar? How do you go about this career choice?
It is a lonely business. I can speak to the romance specific community. There is an amazing community, and there is kind of this recently, I would say in the last 5 years or so, these Latina authors that have been propping up. So the community is small, but because of that, it can feel very intimate, and you can find mentors if you really want to. But before you even into any of that, you need to be reading a lot, read every day, write every day. You need to get good at your craft. You're going to write multiple novels before you decide you're going to publish one. I have about 3 novels and millions other words and like short stories that will never see the light of day. They're burn after reading type stories, but they got me to where I needed to be, that I felt like I'm good enough now to put my work out there. So that's
The muscle, right?
Build the muscle. But honestly, when it comes to writing, especially if you're going to go long form and be crazy and decide to become a novelist, the ideas are easy. You're going to have a million ideas. Starting is easy. Finishing a novel is so hard. So definitely practice your craft. But when you start something, no matter how bad you think it is, no one's in the room with you. You don't have to publish it if you don't want to. Finish the novel and then decide if it's publish worthy or editing worthy, or if it was just the first pancake to practice that muscle.
Just to get it out.
And then go on to the next one. And every novel you start, make sure you finish, because finishing is the hard part.
Oh, wow. Every writing you start, you should finish. That speaks to me, because there's so many things I've started writing and I never finished. So lesson learned.
It's very hard to finish a piece of work.
Wow, incredible. So lastly, how can people find you if they want to know more about Ofelia or read your books? How do they find you and connect with you?
A good place to start is at OfeliaMartinez.com. That's Ofelia with an F. That will link you to all my books, my Reader Club newsletter. You can get a freebie book that way. But my books can be found online anywhere that typically sells books. So Barnes & Nobles, bookshop.org, the usual suspect places.
The usual suspect places. Well, Ofelia, I want to just thank you so much, not only for being here with us and sharing your wisdom of how to enter this career, why is it important to tell our story, why is it important to read stories like ours, but I genuinely want to thank you for bringing that to this space, right? You are the first. I've been living in Kansas City for over 20 years. You're the first Latina author I've ever met, ever, in the 20 years that I've been here. And it's probably more because I'm disconnected to the community in a sense. So I'm just super grateful that you are bringing us to the light, especially with romance novels. Holler. So excited to know that we're the main character. So thank you again. Thank you all for watching. Again, OfeliaMartinez.com is where you can find books. Read her books, read stories that look like us, that sound like us, because that's just so important and part of the making up of who we are and where we're headed. So thanks again for watching. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.